thought they were gonna fight for me. But I sat back and thought about that thing, and something said, you're not their customer. And it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Oh!
And I quickly realized, oh my God. Hey guys, Cornell Jermaine here. Listen, I am here today to share with you a lesson in business. And this is something I had to learn as an entrepreneur who had no entrepreneurial experience. Having seen entrepreneurs and self-employed individuals in my family and in my friend circle, but not ever knowing really the details that go along with it. You know, it's something I had to learn in my own journey. And I wanted to share this with you guys because I think it's important not only for entrepreneurs and business owners, but those who are on the receiving end, the customers. I think it's important to know, and today I want to share with you the three major players in any transaction. And obviously the context of this message is centered around business, entrepreneurship, those who sell goods, trade services for money, etc. This is for you. When it comes to a transaction in business, there are three major players. And the first one is obviously the business. The business can be identified as an entrepreneur, a business owner, a freelancer. You may even get more specific and speak to the actual work that the individual does, like maybe a digital graphic designer, producer, music producer, singer, musician, anything that where you trade your skill, talent, product, good, service, what have you, in exchange for money. You are considered a business. I say that because I need you to identify first that the business has a specific agenda. And that agenda, one, is to make money. When it all boils down, when it all is said and done, the business, the objective of that business is to make money, period. Why? Because you're only considered being in business if there is money being made. If you're not making money at whatever said thing or whatever it is that you're doing, it's really just a hobby. Now, that's not to say that there aren't moments in the journey of business where you may have lean weeks or lean months or lean seasons. Sometimes at the beginning stage, it may take a minute before you start seeing the money being made. You know, you may have to go through some marketing campaigns and do some things and, you know, adjust and tweak, etc. before you start making some money. That's not to say that you should forsake your entrepreneurial or business journey. It just means to say if you are in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in and you're still not making money, then there is a problem. And let me be clear, even nonprofits or not for-profit businesses are in the business of making money. They just exchange and do with the money different things than a for-profit business does. But they still are in the business of making money. They just acquire money and use it for different initiatives. Without going into a bunch of details, the holder of the 501c3 or nonprofit organization, and that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into, has no rights to the money. They can take a salary, of course, but that's a deep dive that I don't want to take right now. And maybe we'll get into that and I can bring in some experts who are very versed in it. I sit on the board of a nonprofit. I know how it goes, but I don't want to confuse you with this message. But I'm just pretty much telling you that even if you're in a nonprofit business, your objective is to make money. You acquiring money for a particular need or service that you're offering to those who you serve, but it's still money that needs to be made in order to get the job done. Period. We got that, right? So when we're talking about being a business where our objective is making money, the next thing in order for you to make that money is for you to find a product, a service, or something to offer the audience that you're serving. So that's the next leg in the transaction. The first player is the business. The second player is the product, service, or good that you're serving or that you're selling. And I want you to understand that is because if you don't have a product, if you don't have a good, if you don't have a service or something that you're offering, you don't have a business. You may have a corporation formed. You may have a formed corporation on paper with the state, but you don't have a business if there's not something being exchanged. You get what I'm saying? So the next player is the product or the service. The third player is the other and the most important player in the old game, because without them, there is no business to be made, and that is the customer. So we have the business, the product and or service, and the customer. And the customer, their objective is pretty much to find their desire, the need that they have, whatever it is that they want, and find the business and or individuals that offer that and go exchange their money for that said product or service. So you have the business, you have the product, you have the customer. I feel like this is an important message for us, whether you're a business entity or self-employed or whatever, or you're just a customer. I say that because the business has a specific allegiance when it comes to their operations, or at least they should. And that is to keep their customer happy. Why? Because that customer is going to be the one that's going to return for business, refer other business, etc. So if you're in the business of, first of all, making good products or services, and then pleasing, finding out what the need of that market or that customer is and pleasing that customer, now you can do good business and grow as an entity. So if your objective is to first get the good product, service, or whatever, and keep that customer happy, then ultimately that customer is going to dictate how you alter, shape, adjust, tweak that product, said service. Why? Because you need to move and adjust with the times and understand what they need in order to be able to properly supply what they need. So the customer is really the main player when it comes to the business transaction. Now, we've heard it many, many times, if you've been in business any length of time, that the customer is always right. And that statement is not to say that the customer is right when it comes to being able to tell you how to do your business. What that really is just saying from a marketing standpoint and just from the ability to be able to serve your client or customer well is the customer knows what they want, and that's what you should be listening to. Essentially, that's what that statement means. The customer is always right, meaning they're right about what they want, right about what they desire, and that is what you need to be trying to supply if you want to keep them as a customer. But here is the real reason why I want to break this down for you all, because I think we need to identify who we are in the player of the transaction. Now, there's something that I've coined as short chain transactions, and that is where you go into a store and maybe you say you're thirsty and you buy a bottle of water. That bottle of water is what you want or desire in that moment to quench your thirst. You pay the clerk at the cashier's station the $1.25, probably more like $2.25 for that bottle of water, and you drink the water and the transaction is over. Short chain. You get the product, you pay the money, it's done. But then there are long chain transactions. And this is where there are multiple parties, multiple people in play that ultimately can determine the end goal, the end result, the end product that you receive. What does that look like? Let's take, for example, real estate. You want a home. You want a product, which is a home. You find an agent that now has the access to a listing. So you go to that agent, you say, agent, I need a home. I want this, that, and the third. This is what I would like. I'm interested in this area, this school district, X, Y, and Z. That agent then says, okay. They go to the MLS or their other realtor colleagues, and they find a listing that matches what you want. But that's not the end of the game. Typically, that agent then has to talk to whoever is the lien holder of that particular property, or whoever is the owner of that particular property, which it could be an individual, it could be a corporation, it could be a bank, it could be the state or the county, it could be either party. They then have to go to whoever that representative is. Sometimes if it's an individual, that individual has another agent that represents them. So now you have not only the agent that is representing you to find the home, but then you have the home and the owner of the home and their agent. You got all these players involved. This is what I'm, listen, follow me. I'm talking about the long chain transaction. And each one of these players has a role in the end product that you're gonna receive. Keep in mind, you still have a desire of what you want, but you have to go through these various channels and negotiate with these various individuals in order to get it. You get what I'm saying? That is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a long chain transaction. And in a transaction like that, sometimes if you're not clear, it could be a little confusing as to who has your loyalty or who should have your loyalty, who you should be holding responsible or who you shouldn't be holding responsible. In this particular instance, where you have the agent who's working with a buyer who's then going to a seller and talking with their agent or representative about a particular product / property, who's responsible in that transaction? Who should be loyal to what it is that you want and what it is that you need? The agent, the owner of that property that you're looking to acquire, their agent or their representative or their realtor has no allegiance to you. The one who should have the allegiance to you is the agent that you're working hand in hand with. Why? Because you're their customer. And I tell you this because it happens in so many ways. I've had in the past an experience like this where I was, and those of you who may have used third-party financing, like maybe when you go in to get a repair on a car or even buy furniture, they offer now, especially it's really popular in the last 5 years or so, these third-party financing companies that can then go in and qualify you for X amount of dollars to purchase product, services, or whatever. And typically you see people using this obviously when they don't either have the money handy or maybe they just don't want to spend the money. They'd rather use their good credit or whatever to purchase X amount of services or products in order to acquire them without going and liquidating their own resources. I had that particular experience in recent times, and this was a third-party financing company that I had used before and had a very good relationship with. And what I didn't know at the time is when this particular service provider was going in and offering me this particular third-party financing, if I was interested, they didn't know if I wanted it or not. They just said, hey, this is available if you want, because the bill that I was going to acquire was quite substantial. So I was like, oh yeah, well that's right. I'm thinking to myself, I used them before, no problem. Yeah, I'll just fill out the thing and whatever, and obviously I got approved. It was all good. They approved me for, we'll say, 3/4 of the amount that I was going to be charged, and I just had to come out with the other quarter out of pocket, which was no problem for me. So I got approved, everything was good, all that good stuff. And if you notice, if you've ever been in these kind of transactions, these things can be done really quick now through text message and all that stuff. Well, I applied the traditional way because that's what I had been used to. I didn't know about this digital option that was available. So I applied with the company on my own and got approved. They then asked me, well, who are you getting services from? And I told them who it was and all that kind of stuff. The service provider then sends me a link via text to then attach the approval that I had gotten from the company to the service that they were providing. Now, mind you, let's do a little backstory just for this. These kind of financial service providers offer this program through vendors. This is what they call them, vendors, where they can offer this option to their customers in order to obviously make money. You know what I mean? Because if they have a transaction that's $5,000 and the person can't afford it, obviously they won't be able to get the work done. So this affords the vendors the opportunity to continue to make money by extending this financial service to their customers. So I'm in this transaction, the work was done, approval was done. I attached the approval to the service, and the service provider sent me a link. He said, well, I see you're approved and all that kind of stuff, and I'm going to just send you a link so you can, whatever. So I'm going through the process, as normal, click, continue, and done. Mind you, I was approved for 3/4 of the amount, not the full amount. So I was gonna come out of something out of my pocket, which I had already knew when I got the approval. It's fine. Then get the transaction done, the service was rendered, approval was done, I was good to go, everything was done. I then call the finance company now to establish payments and let them know what my plan was for the payment process moving forward, because you have to set this up. They have various options that they give you, and you can set up, various options, and obviously they come with different terms, but you set this up. So I set it up, and in this call, I talked to the agent, and they're telling me, okay, well, pulling up all their notes and we had your services done by such and such, and this is the amount that you owe, and they tell me the amount, and it's $300 more than what it was supposed to be. Now let's just put some figures on it. I was approved for $3,000. The transaction was $4,000. I had to pay $1,000 out of pocket because the $3,000 obviously that I was approved for wouldn't cover. No problem. They tell me, obviously because the $1,000 was paid and that was done with, it was only this $3,000 that was extended from them that I had to pay back. They say, well, your approval amount, we have $3,300. So I say, $3,300? I said, I thought I was approved for $3,000. Where's this extra $300 coming from? And they say, well, that's the 10% margin. Now, this is new to me. Now, I learned about this, and keep up with me because I'm going to take you somewhere with this. I learned about this because of this transaction. I had used this company before, never heard of this, and never seen this 10% margin that is being offered. So I say, well, what is this? I said, can you explain what that is to me? And they said, well, this is just a margin that we extend just to cover incidentals in the fact that maybe just in case you maybe acquire different services that may go over your approval amount. So we give the vendor a 10% window where they can go over and beyond that approval amount to cover said costs, whether it be taxes, service fees, or whatever the case may be. So I said, so they attached a $300 10% to that margin? They said, yes. I said, to being honest with you, I said the transaction I made was a whole $1,000 more than what you approved me for. And I paid that out of my own pocket. I said, so there was no need for me to acquire a 10% margin or even utilize that service. I said, how do I get this rectified? And she said, well, go back up to the vendor and you tell them to check this and let them know. And then if that doesn't go through, then call us back. I go to the vendor and talk to them, and they tell me on record, they tell me that this 10% was allocated by the financing company. And I said, well, since when do you get, and what he referred to it as was a tax. I said, so when do you get taxed on a personal loan? I said, yeah, you get an interest possibly after you get the loan and all that kind of stuff, but I don't even get that because I pay the loan. There's a certain offer that they do where if you pay it within a certain period, you don't even acquire any interest, and that's what I do. So I said, well, I don't ever heard of being taxed on a loan at the point of transaction. I don't even understand that. They said, well, yeah, they do it. And he went on talking fast and all that kind of stuff. You kind of know when somebody's jiving and just doing a lot of speed talking and all that kind of stuff. And then he offers to get on the phone with them. He said, well, call him back and And if not, call me and I'll get on the phone with him as well. I said, okay. By this time I knew he was jiving. He was taking advantage of this 10% window and probably doing it to every client or customer that came through the door. Okay. But because most didn't know better or didn't know to question it, they, probably go with it and let it be. But I'm like, okay, no, not today. So I called them back, the financing company, after I speak with this vendor. And I explained to them everything that happened. And I told them that I had on record him saying that this 10% is something that is allocated by the financing company, by you all. And she goes, no, that's not true. We don't do that. She said, well, this is what I can do. I said, we would have to escalate this to an investigation stage where whoever the superiors that handle that kind of situation would have to get involved. And I said, yes, I would like to do that. So a few days go by. She says they're going to call you and get more info about the case, and they'll move forward and let you know how they can handle it. So by this time, I think I got it in the bag, right? Because I have on record them saying that this 10% was allocated by them and that all of these things that were clearly lies. She solidified as lies before she even moved the case to the investigation stage. So I get a call a few days later. The gentleman speaks to me, asks me what happened, and I told him I had on record. I sent him the file of the record that I had, so just so he can hear it for himself. So that was that. So he says, okay, I'm gonna deal with this and do what I have to do, and I'll be back, call you back and let you know. So he calls me back a few days after that, and he says, well, we called the vendor and this, that, and the third, and they confirmed the amount, and here's what we can do for you. And this is where it gets real. This is where I understand my position, and this is where I want you to see the point that I'm making. Because he tells me this is what we can offer you. He said, you have two options. You can either pay the loan as is, meaning you would pay what you were approved for plus this extra $300, or we can reduce your payment by, I think it was like 30 or 40%. So let's say it was $3,000. They could reduce it all the way down to $2,500. Well, it would have been $3,300 because of the $300 extra. They could have reduced it all the way down to $2,500, where I would be getting like an $800 reduction to the loan. He said, but the catch in that is if you do that reduction, you won't be able to do business with us anymore. That's where it got real. So I leaned forward and I said, so you're telling me that this company can just add 10% to my loan without my knowledge? Mind you, I had no idea of this 10% window, which first of all, I'm telling him, I said, I believe should be something that is privy to your loan holders, not the vendor, because I'm in business with you, not the vendor. And he was just listening and very quietly. And I said, but furthermore, you're telling me that all you do is call him, they approve the amount and say, yes, that it is correct. And then I either have to be penalized by paying this money that I really didn't owe, or taking a reduction and not being able to utilize your services anymore. I said, I don't think that's fair. I said, I've been proven to be a good customer. This is my third time using you guys. You never had a problem with my payment history. I'm always paid on time, paid in full as agreed. And I should not be penalized. The taking advantage that this vendor is doing. I said, because I bet you if you go through their records, you'll see this 10% margin in everybody's transaction. And he quietly said, yes, I understand, but you signed the paperwork. And I said, well, you're right. I said, because when he sent me the text message that would attach the loan to the service, it was a quick little, you know what I mean? Click, click here, yes, 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 yes. A little fine print here and there, but that's it. It never occurred to me that they could adjust my loan amount. I had never heard of this in all the time of me doing business with you. Never occurred to me. So yes, I clicked through it because I'm assuming that what I was told was what it was. Not that somebody could go in and say, oh, we want a little bit more, or we need a little bit more. You get what I'm saying? He said, yes, that's true, but you still signed the paperwork. So now I'm realizing very quickly my position, and this is where I want you to get this. I'm telling you this story so you can get this. This is where I quickly realized my position in this transaction. Because I thought that this finance company was gonna fight for me. I thought because I had it on record, I showed good history with them. I'd used them with other vendors before, paid on time, good record, all that kind of stuff. I thought they were gonna fight for me. But I sat back and thought about that thing, and something said, you're not their customer. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh! And I quickly realized, oh my God, I'm not the customer in this situation when it comes to this financing company. I'm the product. And what does that mean? I'm disposable. I thought I was the customer because I'm in this agreement, in this financial agreement with this institution, but I wasn't. Who was the real customer? Who was the real customer? That vendor is their customer, not me. I'm the vendor's customer because I was getting service from them, but I'm not that financing company's customer. Which means, as a business entity, what did we say before? That as a business, you have an allegiance or a obligation to keep your customer happy. That means that that financing company, there was no reason. They had no allegiance to me because I wasn't their customer. So they didn't have no need to keep me happy. Their vendor was their customer. Because to them, I was a short chain transaction. I have a customer called the service provider. And the service provider then brings me their customer in order for me to have a product to sell money to or to acquire money from. So I'm the product of the financing company who was given to them by the service provider, who's the real customer. Why? Because after I've paid my one loan back, this vendor is gonna continue to bring them customer after customer after customer after customer, or product after product. Because what is a product? Let's talk about it in definition. A product is a thing or person that is a result of an action or process. I was just the result of an action of process, not the customer. So I'm saying all this to say is when we're out here doing business, realize what role you play and who you are in the transaction, because it will help you to better place your allegiance if you're a business owner. And as a customer, it will better help you place your loyalty. It will better help you place things if you know where you fall in this transaction. And keep in mind, if you are not even a business owner or an entrepreneur, you're still somebody's customer, you're still somebody's product, you're still somebody's business. What do I mean? If you're in education, if you're a teacher, who's your customer? A school district hired you to work into this school, and now you're in here teaching fifth graders. Who's your customer? Your customer is that direct supervisor that you work for. That principal that you work for is your customer. And your customer is the one who's supposed to remain happy, right? Now, remind you, there are all kind of variables that go into this, but ultimately your customer is supposed to be the one that's made happy. And in this instance, as a teacher, the customer is your supervisor, which would be the principal. Who's the product? The product is that student. The product is that student, that thing or person that is a result of an action or transaction or process. The student is the product of the teacher. Who's the business? The teacher. That art of teaching and that skill of teaching is the business that you're in to keep your customer, the principal, happy. Why? So you can maintain a job and keep your product viable and lively and learned, and you get what I'm saying. What about, let's take entertainment. I work in the entertainment space. When I'm hired to work a movie or a film or a television show or whatever, a theater, who is my customer? I'm showing up to this job as a business. Now, granted, you may not necessarily have a business entity, you may not necessarily have a structured LLC, etc. but you're still showing up with your skill set, with your offering, and you're the business that shows up on the scene to provide that service or whatever it is that you're doing. When I show up to that film set, who is my customer? My customer is that direct producer that hired me. That's my customer. Who is the product? My product is whomever I have to service within that production. And if my product, the people that I have to service within that production, are not to the producer's standards, then I have not kept my customer happy. Who's the customer of the producer that hired me? He has a customer as well. Who is his customer? His customer is the network that hired him, or the director that hired him. What is his product? His product is the film, the actual set and the transactions and everything that goes on that set coming out to a certain level of or standard that is pleasing to that network. So if at the end of that wrap or that film or whatever it is that he's doing, if everything has not been done in a certain way, and mind you, it starts even before you filming and goes even after you filming, if that entire process is not done up to a certain standard, then his customer, that network, will not be happy. But then the network, ABC, HBO, BET, whoever you want to call it, has a customer. Who is their customer? The viewers. The viewers that watch their programming, watch their films. That's their customer. What is their product? The completion of that said production, whether it's a films, a television show, a theater presentation, whatever it may be. Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything has a business, a product, and a customer. And if you understand this concept, it will allow you to do transactions on such a greater level. Why? Because you'll have a revelation of what role you play and who you need to make sure that you keep happy, or who you need to make sure that you serve in excellence. Now, I'm not talking about kissing butt and brown nose. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just understanding that within the transaction that you're doing, when whatever said place you're supplying the need, whether you are working for your design work for a local firm, or you're representing a case in the courtroom, whomever your allegiance is to. So if you're a lawyer, your customer is who? That client that you're representing, right? You're the business as a lawyer. Your customer is that client you're representing. Who is the product? What's the product? The product is the verdict, or whatever it is that you're trying to get out of that case. That's the product. So whether it's a conviction, whether it's to get them off, or whatever the case may be, that's the product of that transaction. And your customer is that client. A lot, right? You know what? I take that back. In that lawyer situation, the customer would actually be either the jury or the judge. And the product would be the client. Why? Because we say it right here, the product is a thing or a person that is a result of an action or process. The business is the actual practice of whatever it is that you're doing. And the customer is the person or business that buys goods or services from another business. So you have to get that judge or jury to buy into what it is that you're trying to sell, which is the fact that your client is guilty or not. Either your client is not guilty if you're on the defense, or if you're on the prosecution side, that your client is the victim of this person's guilty action, etc. You know what I'm saying? So that's good. I'm glad that I clarified that. Thank you, Holy Ghost. That was a clarification, because I wanted to make sure that you understand this even in every instance or every phase of society. You get what I'm saying? You have a customer, and if you operate in anything, you have a business, whether you're making money or not. But if you're in the business of making money and you have your own business, you need to understand this. Because the quicker you identify your customer is the quicker that you can now get to work to pleasing and making sure that they have what they need. As in my instance, I was not the customer to that financing company. So they had no need to go in and pay a lot of money for this long investigation to try to dig into this vendor in order to see if they wrongfully charged this individual. They had no need to do that. Why? We don't even have to spend that kind of money. Why? Because all we need to say is, you signed the paperwork. It ain't our fault, you signed it. That's all I got to say to get out of that. Why? Because I'm not their customer. At the end of the day, there was no need to push and try to pry and get more deeper into the situation, because they knew, okay, even if we don't make the full loan back and we give him this cut and he can't do business with us, he's disposable. Because he ain't the one we really in business with. It's the vendor. Understand this. If you get this, and I'm telling you, think about this on every level of your life. Even if you're a nonprofit, even if you're in ministry, even if you're in self-employment and freelance, think about this. When I go into my rental space, the space that I rent, the studio that I rent, the product is that space that I rent. I am the business, and my customer is the people that sit in my chair. But the space that I rent, that's somebody else's business. The landlord, the leaseholder that I rent from, that's their business, and I'm their customer. So they have to keep me happy while I keep the people that are in my chair happy. You get it? Do you get it? Okay, I think I've explained it enough. I hope you get it. I've given you scenarios. I done told you about my own business, which, I don't really care because I think it's a learning moment for somebody out there. But granted, I'm not mad about it. If I didn't say it, I took the reduction because I said to myself, well, if this is a business that's doing business like this, I don't necessarily want to do business with them anymore. So I took the reduction, so I'm paying even less than I was supposed to, and to God be the glory. So that's a whole nother story. But I gave you that example to support and help you to see that even in these long chain transactions, you have to understand where you fall. And there's a lot of this out here in the marketplace. And if you don't understand this, you can misunderstand things and get things all confused. And then you think somebody owes you something that really don't, because you're not really their customer. You're really just a product or byproduct of their customers. You get what I'm saying? So I hope you get this and I hope this helps you. The three major players in any transaction, I'm gonna say it again: the business, the product, and the customer. Know which one you are and know where you stand so that you can know who you need to be serving, who you need to be holding accountable, and how you need to show up in the marketplace. Listen, if you have not liked, shared, or subscribed to this channel, please do so. Like the video, share it with a friend, and check out another video where I talk about 5 reasons for those who are going into business for themselves, 5 signs that you are not ready for entrepreneurship. Check that out. Let me know what you think. And again, I'll see you real soon back here, same place, same time. Take care.